one better. I'll let each one of them represent, introduce themselves. So, Emek?
Good afternoon. My name is Emek Sadat, and I'm the CEO of Asite. We are a startup delivering solutions for the energy sector. We are 15 people here in Israel. I established the company 3 years ago. We see the market, the energy market, facing tremendous changes. In a few years, each and every one of us won't be only consuming energy, we'll also producing energy, storing the energy in the home battery, maybe in the electric vehicle, and we'll be able to trade the energy if energy has a surplus. This transformation requires a new way of thinking, a new paradigm, and a new operating system for the energy market. This is what we do. We deliver a platform. We developed a platform for the last 3 years that allows people to utilize better their energy at home, to trade the energy, and a marketplace for each and every user like us, which will be also producer and trader, to make more of his energy assets.
David?
Yes, hello. Good afternoon, everybody. My name's David Gilmore, and part of my role is to lead BP Ventures. BP Ventures has around about $500 million employed in over 40 portfolio companies, and venturing is a key part of BP's forward strategy. And why that's the case? BP faces a twin challenge of producing energy efficiently for a growing world. We've seen the GDP figures grow. More and more people need energy, and there's about 1 billion people don't have the sort of experiences we have. And to do that, to minimize the footprint on the world. So to move through the energy transition, and we know going forward, the world of energy is going to look quite different than it is today. So you can understand why venturing becomes very, very important. Specifically, we're very, very interested in the mobility area, so working in batteries and the electric vehicle, the transformation of transportation, either through biofuels or into electrons or battery swapping. We're very, very interested in understanding how the digital energy world is going to be moving forward, how the grid starts connecting with the transportation systems. This challenge and changes continues to move forward. To looking at the way we use low carbon capture technologies, so we can look at getting more from the fuels and the products we get from the ground. Israel forms a critical part of our innovation system. I have a team based around the West Coast, the East Coast, but over the last year we've made big inroads into understanding more about the great technology you're producing. So I've got 3 things which we've done over the last year. I think the first one is a major investment in StoreDot, which is the ultra-fast charging battery. We've got a big relationship with FieldBit, which we're deploying in our onshore oil and gas fields in the US, and that's transforming the way we're operating our wells. And in our rocket space kind of incubator, we're dealing with one of the startups here in Fleetonomy, which is looking at integrated transport solutions. So we're very keen to welcome great technology coming from the market here in Israel, and we're open for business in Israel.
Hillary?
Hi, I'm Hillary Flynn from National Grid Ventures. I'm the director of incubation there, and I feel like many people might not know who National Grid is, so I'll just say briefly. We are a UK headquartered electric and gas utility. We're the system operator in the UK. We also have transmission. And then we have operations in the US, in the northeastern part of the US, in Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and New York, where we are also an electric and gas utility. And then we also have some unregulated business in competitive transmission, as well as renewable energy. But that's a very small part of our business, and we're looking to grow that over time. The group that I'm in is called Group Technology and Innovation, and when I started with Grid 2.5 years ago, we were a small group of 10 people. We were supporting the core business with emerging technology trends, facilitating interactions with startups with our core business, and trying to help projects move through that system of piloting and hopefully eventually rolling out a larger scale deployment. When I joined, we were investors. We were an LP in Energy Impact Partners, and it's a $500 million fund of basically utilities. There are a couple other companies in that. But it's basically utilities, and the motivation was that we're not really connected with the startup ecosystem and innovation as much as we would like to be. So we're going to start investing in companies to have better access, to understand emerging trends, and really try to evolve our industry, which I think many would agree has a lot of room to evolve. And so we did that, and we had a great experience. We've been investing for 3 years, and then earlier this year, the board decided that we felt comfortable enough and had such a good experience that we would develop our own direct investing capabilities, and so that's the team that I'm still on. We went from just innovation to now doing innovation plus direct investing, and it's everything from seed through growth stage. And also have a team that's embedded within ventures that does business development, so tries to take the companies we're investing in and help connect them with the company in a more meaningful way that could potentially have a greater impact than just the pilots that utilities are known for doing over and over again. We've also opened an office in Silicon Valley, which is where the head of our group sits. So I'm very happy to be here. Many people have asked me if it's my first time to Israel. It is. And so far, it's been fantastic, and I'm really excited to meet startups, corporate venture capital, and other folks in the ecosystem here. So thanks for having me.
And last, Utilligent, it's a North America strategic consulting. We provide services to the energy industry, specifically utilities, oil and gas and water utilities, really helping them through the transformation of the business model, thinking through cost cutting. A lot of utilities looking through to cut cost since consumption, and demand for energy is really flat. Infrastructure is really old. And there is a lot of disruptors, so regulation in many markets in the US is being open basically for third parties to come in and participate in this market. And I think it's happening here in Israel as well, with the new regulations, and what's happening to the Israeli electric utilities, So with that, I'll start with AMEC and say, why, what energy has to do with innovation? Why the tech sector should pay attention?
Well, I have a confession to make, or at least a disclosure. I'm here on a mission. I mean, like the Blues Brother, not from God, but on a mission. My mission is to convince you, ladies, gentlemen, that the energy sector presenting the next opportunity for the high-tech community to chip in. Say in the last 200 years, the energy sector, the energy was flowing top-down, was produced in a relatively small number of power plants and was, pushed down the stream, so to speak, to us, to consumers. In the last years and moreover in the upcoming years, that's going to change, which is going to change the energy landscape as we know it upside down. So people like us, like you, again, will be able to generate, store energy and push it back to the grid. It's kind of similar to what happened in other industries, like Facebook in the internet, Airbnb in accommodation and hotels, and really innovation going to play a major role in that. So the energy sector, I mean, it was, for 200 years right now? It was designed for that, built for that, for the energy to flow top-down, right? The methodology, the business model, the service and the products. And that's going to change in, say, 10 or 20 years. That's dazzling. The pace is amazingly fast for such an industry. And if you reflect back to Philip from E.ON, he was here like an hour ago for the panel, you should maybe watch the video and be very careful listening to what he said. He said the exact same thing. And the wording here for E.ON, which is the largest utility in Europe, was agile. they looking for agility. They looking for new services, new product, new business model in the energy market. Just to give you a bit of a numbers to articulate the opportunity, Bloomberg issued a report they issue every year for the energy industry last year, 2017. And within this report, they predict that by 2025, for instance, the energies that are going to produce in United States and other countries as well, but specifically, I just remember the numbers on top of my head for the state, that's going to be 9% energy generated, what is known as a distributed or behind the meter, meaning in layman term, in my house, in Mayor house, and everybody else. It's going to come up for 2 to 3% today to 9% in 2025. 9% translate to $12 billion. So the ones that are going to lose $12 billion is the power plants, the big power plants. The ones that are going to earn or going to win, so to speak, the $12 billion are us. And that's really, just to give you a flavor, in Germany, I believe it's 22% correlates to $45 billion that's going to be exchanged between people. Huge numbers, really, tremendously. And to do that in an efficient way and to bridge the gap of a few years, taking an industry which is so heavy duty and so heavy regulated, and to change it over, that's innovation going to play a role, a big role, maybe the only role in order to make it happen. Otherwise, it's going to break.
Thank you. Hillary, what do you look for when you're evaluating technologies, you know, and could you give some examples
Sure.
of 2 or 3 that you invested in?
Yeah. So whenever I'm talking to a startup, I have 2 hats on. The first is this a technology that our core business could use, and who should I be contacting to facilitate that interaction? And then on the other side, looking at, is this a company that we would invest in? So every company that we invest in has to have strategic relevance to our core business. So it's a really important factor, and many CVCs who have sat up here today have said the same thing. And so we work very closely with our core business to understand, you know, what is the value being created by this potential startup, and how could we work together? That said, there are plenty of companies that approach me that are not necessarily interested in the investment, but they want to work with a utility to really learn more about the business and try to have some validation of their technology. And we can't invest in all of those companies, so a lot of what I do is also connecting to the core business. So we also look at financials, of course, but we have to have the strategic as well. I'll give some examples. We've made 4 investments this year. They haven't been made public yet because we want to do a big rollout and a splash in the market, so more to come on that front. But I'll talk a little bit about the investments we've made through Energy Impact Partners. We've made 19 investments. We've had 1 exit with Ring. And of those 19 investments, our core utility business is working with about half of those companies, which is a pretty successful engagement, I think, with the fund, because there are other utilities that have different interests than ours. So I'll give 2 examples. The first one is Opus One, and Opus One has worked with us in a microgrid in a city that's part of our service area, and we've together developed a model for pricing electricity at a very specific location within the system, and it's down to a level that we haven't done before. We usually do pricing at a very high level, wholesale level, but this is pricing at very specific within the microgrid level, so that we can really test out this value that's being created by distributed energy that's we know is growing and important to the industry going forward. So that's one example. Another example is a smart home device. So we have invested in a company called Sense, and they have a device you put on your circuit at home, and it will use algorithms to learn, and machine learning to understand the different signatures of the appliances in someone's home. And it's, you know, we decided, well, this is a really interesting technology, but we thought, you know, how could we actually use this? So we didn't really have a specific idea for it, but had some conversations and thought this would be a great thing to help our customers with load management, understanding where their power comes from, especially customers that have a hard time paying their bills or anticipating what their bill will be. If we give them this device, will this help them better manage their energy as well as their bills? So we put a note out to our customers. We have availability for 400 of these to be installed, and we installed them in people's homes. And the reception of it was fantastic. We filled all of the slots immediately, and we're ongoing with, you know, how successful this technology will be. We need to test it out because we really don't know. We think it will be impactful for our customers, but, you know, we have to prove it out, and then once we do, we can roll it out to a larger part of our customer base.
Thank you. David, you bring a different point of view on energy, you know, more from the upstream and downstream production. Why innovation is so important in your industry, in your energy?
Yeah. So I'll just get back to the dual challenge, which we believe the world faces, which is growing energy for a growing population, and the second one to do so with a lower carbon footprint. And if we look at what needs to happen to achieve the commitments made at COP21, the Paris Agreement, is there needs to be an absolute transformation of the energy mix. And it's going to happen in two ways. I think the first way is a significant improvement in the energy efficiency of our current systems. And we estimate that there can be an overall improvement of something like 35% of the energy system. And that requires a completely new way of doing things. Let's give an example. So if we take our upstream business, the exploration production business, it's been flagged already. I think the quote was 0.5% of data is used. We think it's about 3%, but there's a lot of data which we collect, which we don't understand and don't use. So we have an idea of the connected upstream, where we can access data and actually optimize production to produce the oil and gas much more efficiently and get further extraction out of the wells and the systems we've got. We estimate currently that only 35% of the available resources are extracted from any field at any time. So it's a huge amount we can do around the productivity of our systems. If you go to the internal combustion engine, its demise is nowhere near anywhere it needs to be. So just the sheer improvements in the internal combustion engine means that you'll at least get the savings from the internal combustion engine you'll get from the electrification of the transportation system. So for our core products, innovation, technology around our core, around using data to dramatically improve what we do, is going to be absolutely essential for the world to achieve the 1.5 or the 2 degree target, depending on which one you want to actually choose at this stage. Moving through the energy transition, which is decarbonizing the energy system, means that the energy mix going forward is going to look completely different than it does currently. So we're seeing the rapid growth of renewables, we're seeing the increasing gas, and we're seeing the demise of coal as we move through the energy transition. And each one of those is bringing its own challenge to the way we operate grid systems and the energy system. So as the renewables go up in a system, then we need to understand about intermittency. It starts leading us through to sensing technologies, grid management systems, all of which is actually dealt with at a systemic level, where complexity and data and actually understanding that data becomes absolutely critical to produce a reliable, cost-efficient system. Most of these challenges, in fact all of them, are actually new to the world. They're not things that we have ready-to-hand solutions, so we need to go out and actually search for the best possible technology. For BP, we have deep expertise in engineering, in chemistry, in physics, but we're looking at technologies which are actually new to BP, which is why we're seeking expertise from outside of BP, to say, work with us, teach us how these technologies can be applied into the energy system as we migrate from being an oil and gas economy to an economy which is richer in renewables, and one where we can actually start creating new business models and new business streams for BP.
Thank you. One of the things that you know, about 2 years ago when the coin fell in my head is we work with a lot of specifically utilities in North America and Asia, in Australia. And a couple of years ago in one of the conferences that I was attending in the US, I was seeing more and more people from the utility industry that have titles like innovations, you know, director of innovations, you know. So I started exploring, and it was really an eye-opening to see that a lot of energy companies in the US are not waiting for the large software companies really to provide their solutions. I mean, they're looking for startups, and I think big software vendors as well now really open their eyes, and they have their own VCs that they're looking. You know, there is you know, a guy from ABB here, you know, Siemens, you know, so all the GE, you know, and all of them have now venture capitals, you know, so there is an opportunity, but there is also challenges ahead. So I'll open the questions to all of you. What are some of the challenges that you see in your respective industries, you know, in the next 3 to 5 years?
So what's the challenges BP face? I mean, I think we have, as I said, let's go back to the twin challenge again, which is that we have a fully operating business which needs to continue producing energy for the world. And what we're talking about here is major disruption, which may be occurring actually every day as we're speaking. And it's really understanding how it is that we take a very, very large company which has a huge legacy business and how it can start transforming itself into a more nimble and changing organization which is meeting the needs of the consumers. And therefore it needs to embrace innovation, particularly technologies coming from outside BP, in a different way than perhaps it does before. And it has to learn new skills. And those new skills, I think, are going to be coming as much from outside the company as they are from inside. So this doesn't just represent a technology challenge. It represents an organization, a cultural and intellectual challenge for the company to transform itself over the next 3 to 5 years. I think the BP understands what it needs to do. I think actually the ability for it to move through this challenge is something which we believe we can do, but it represents, I think, one of those generational challenges which the company faces, which it's now squaring up to.
If I may. What are top challenges? We're a startup. We don't have challenges. Everything is dandy. Well, beside the day-to-day operation, we present a revolution in the energy market, meaning we believe again that the energy market going upside down. So from our perspective, our usual suspect customers are the utilities. But personally, if you ask me, or the vision of the company is from 20 years from now, I'm not sure that the utility will exist. I mean, the incumbent utility, as we know them today, with the business model and the products, will sustain, will exist, to say it bluntly. So from our perspective, when you come with a disruptive technology to a sector that you believe is going to be changed fundamentally, difficult to find a partner, difficult to solicit, difficult to present the idea, because you take the utility and you say, in 20 years now, I'm not sure that you'll be here. Another service provider may take your place. Well, a challenge.
So I agree with some of that, but not all of it. So I think there is a lot of, as I mentioned, evolution happening in the industry. And on the one hand, you have the 3 Ds that the industry always talks about: decarbonization, digitization, and decentralization, which we fully embrace and we believe is happening and are looking for ways to incorporate what we're doing into that future vision and expectation, frankly. And then on the other hand, we are a highly, highly regulated industry where almost everything we do, we go to the regulator with a proposal and then we debate it back and forth, and then we finally, get some sort of decision on whether we can do it. And the things that we are always challenged with on the regulated side is it has to be safe, has to be reliable, and it has to be affordable. And I think the affordable piece is something that I spend a lot of time working with startups on business models and how we can work with the business model in a way that works either within our existing regulations, or if there needs to be some change in the regulation, how do we make the case to the regulator that this is the right business model, this makes sense? You know, I could give you an example of this with EV charging. So there's a lot of different ways you could go about EV charging. We firmly believe electrification of vehicles is going to happen in the future, and we want to be a part of it. But whether we build the infrastructure, whether a private company builds the infrastructure, who the different players are, what our role is, this is an ongoing conversation that we have with all of the stakeholders that we engage with to figure out what is our role, what role do we want to play, how do we communicate that, and how do we work with different startups and other players to create that business model that makes sense for everyone involved, including our customers, who ultimately we do have to deliver safe, reliable, and affordable power to. So I do think there's a lot of evolution happening. I think we will still be around in the future in 20 years, but certainly think there's a lot of room for innovation around how we do business in the future.
So we talked about digitalization and we talked about data. What about security? I mean, you know, so now, you know, before, I mean, the energy, I mean, it's critical infrastructure, right? You know, so if you open your critical infrastructure to the internet, and all those devices start talking to the internet, there will be some other people coming in and want to talk to your devices and direct energy and do some stuff to your fields, you know. So what is your view on security and how cybersecurity can play a role in your industry?
Okay, I'll speak to this a little bit, which is before we invest in any company, we do a full digital security look at exactly what sort of safeguards there are. And that's because we don't want to be importing into our infrastructure any additional risks. One thing's about the refining systems and the control systems we have in our industry. In effect, we're all at risk through the sort of SCADA systems and everything else we have. So cybersecurity has moved very rapidly from being somewhere in the pack over the last couple of years to probably being our number one risk beyond our operational safety risk, which we have within the oil and gas industry. So we're spending huge amounts of dollars and attention and education. That's first of all probably primarily education, in educating our whole workforce around the critical importance of just using simple tools like email and just being vigilant around the whole of the cybersecurity agenda. So it's going to play, I think, an increasingly critical role, and I think increasingly we're going to need much more sophisticated tools to actually ensure that as we import technology into BP, that we're really clear what risks we're importing, we've got the mitigations against those.
We got a 5-minute sign here. So any questions from we have like 2 minutes left. Any questions from the audience? Thank you. Oh, there's a question.
Other than the gentleman to your immediate right, the other two are at large ventures. How early will you go? What size checks are too little for you to bother with? What's your process?
Do you want me to go first? So we are still fairly new. We started doing investments. We started considering investments in May of this year. So there is some kind of new considerations happening, but in general, we do everything from seed to growth. So looking at a couple $100,000 on the seed side to, up to tens of millions on the growth side would be the sizes we've considered so far. There you go.
Yeah, I've got nothing more to add. It's similar. So I think the biggest check we've written is probably about 30 million. Smallest is probably a couple of 100,000 for POCs or seeds. So Our sweet spot's probably A round, but we go higher depending on the opportunity, and we go lower depending on how exciting the technology is. So really exciting technology, we'll back. Mature technology, which has a great fit strategically, we'll invest. So actually, we play the whole park.
Thank you for the panel. Thank you very much.